Okay, so we'll get started again. Well, I don't know what to say about this next panel, because I think if you were designing a dream team for a conversation on this topic, this is kind of the kind of thing this would look like. So I'm going to hand straight over to Vili to lead everybody through the discussion. Enjoy.
Yeah. So I would like to start this panel, or let's say discussion, with one thought, and this is that for me, in the world of flight time limitation and fatigue risk management, the safety begins with understanding the human limitations. And this is something around what we will try to customize our discussion today. So compliance with the FTL, prescriptive ones, doesn't necessarily mean that you are completely mitigated all fatigue risks. It doesn't mean so. And even with completely legal and compliant in that prescriptive way roster, there are still options and possibility that the fatigue is being introduced into the system. And this is where the fatigue risk management begins. So not at the boundary of legality, but at the boundary of human performance. And what I would like to do now as fatigue risk management inspector at Croatian Civil Aviation Agency is to focus a little bit more on the area, or let's say critical area, which is very important, but sometimes very underestimated. The area in fatigue risk management which is oriented toward the training of the personnel responsible for the establishing and maintaining the crew rosters. So these people, these professionals are, let's say, in the front line of the fatigue defense when it comes to the operator's responsibility. And what they do, their decision, can influence on the workload distribution, on the circadian rhythm of the crews. It can also have a very big impact on their sleep opportunities. And that's why we wanted to discuss that. But we do not want to have this only as one-way discussion. So we have also prepared and open, I think now, the Slido surveys with several questions, grouping in 3 items, and also with one open statement that you can put in. I would really like that you contribute to this, especially the representatives of the crew schedulers and crew planners and their managers, because we will frame our discussion around that with our panelists. And our panelists today are, so we have from the left to the right, Cherie Butler, and she's Easyjet's Fatigue Risk Management System Compliance and Training Manager, with a strong focus on operational fatigue risk management, compliance, and training. Cherie brings valuable real-world airline experience to this discussion, particularly in translating fatigue risk management principles into practical day-to-day operational solutions. Her perspective will help us bridge the gap between regulatory expectations and operational implementation. Then we have Nataša Poznić, my colleague. She's Civil Aviation Safety Inspector and Human Factors CRM trainer at Croatian Civil Aviation Agency, expert for cabin crew and flight time limitation fatigue risk management, and her combined regulatory and training experience brings an essential perspective, particularly on how fatigue risk management principles are understood, applied, and supervised across both flight and cabin crew domains. Then Dario Fakleš, specialist for strategic planning and business development and a member of the Fatigue Safety Action Group at Croatia Airlines. Dario holds a PhD with a dissertation focused on the objectivation of pilot fatigue in optimizing the airline crew scheduling process. His academic research, combined with a strategic and operational role within the airline, brings a valuable analytical and scientific perspective to our discussion, particularly on how fatigue, data, and modeling can meaningfully influence roster design and decision-making. So it's a little bit more than... Then we have Hendrik Pieter-Paul van Griethuysen, Vice President Aviation Safety at Cargolux Airlines International, where he serves as safety manager and oversees the airline's fatigue risk management system. Hendrik has held several key leadership positions within flight operations, including Assistant Chief Pilot and Deputy Chief Pilot. His background provides a strong operational foundation, particularly in crew support and planning processes, combined with executive-level oversight of safety and fatigue risk management. His perspective will add important insight into how fatigue risk management system functions, not only at the planning level, but within the broader safety management framework of an airline. Nice. Santiago Oviedo. Santiago leads human factors at Vueling and has been a driving force behind the development of the company's fatigue risk management system. As both an active line captain and the architect of their fatigue risk management system, he brings a unique dual perspective, operational reality from the flight deck, combined with strategic oversight of fatigue risk management at the organizational level. Also with us, Marc Navarro Puigdevall. Marc has played a key role in transforming Vueling's rostering planning model through the implementation of Jeppesen optimization tool. His experience brings a valuable operational and technological perspective, particularly on how modern rostering systems can support both efficiency and fatigue risk management when used with the right competence and understanding. So, let's start with some very simple question that I have prepared for ourselves and my group. And this would be coming from the area of the challenges in training. And we are talking about that discipline of personnel, so crew scheduling, crew controllers. So what would be the common challenges in current training? And what do you think about the appropriate balance between regulatory topics and real case scenarios? So maybe Cherie can start with that. She can maybe open that discussion, how this is being implemented within the operator like Easyjet.
Thank you. So we would train both new ops planning staff and crewing staff for 4 days face-to-face, and that would include both the flight time limitations and the fatigue risk management. When we do the initial training, we would keep it more simple. We then actually get the opportunity to do a recurrent day with those teams every year, where we then concentrate more on what FTL breaches have we seen this season, give them graphs and statistics on trends that we've seen in the data. We also do more of an update, also from Martin's side of the team, on what trends have we seen in the fatigue report forms. Have we had a development with the biomathematical model? For instance, we're about to go to FRAM version 2. So we've been talking to the officers more about what the implementation of that will be and when it's likely to happen. So, yeah, I think there's more case to use more real examples in the recurrent than there is the initial, but there are still examples of how to spot when there is an FTL breach. And we also have 2 different levels of our FRAM reporting. So we get one that comes out on our non-gov report that's at one level, and then we've got one on government reports at another level. But yet there's more emphasis for some teams on the day-to-day operation, so the delayed reporting, the split duties, the standby call-outs. Whereas for the ops planning team, because that's the rostering delivery and rostering planning, they've got more foresight to plan things in a better way. They've got more time to take on the journey and the exercise that they're working on.
Thank you, Cherie. And what do you use as the technology to deliver such training? Is it only computer-based training, related training, or it is a classroom training? Is it a combination of this kind of technology used or options used during the training? So that's very important to see how you think about that.
Of course. So no, myself and my team are all adult educator trained to a level 3. All of our crewing and rostering training is predominantly planned to be face-to-face. The annual recurrent is always face-to-face. Sometimes with the initial, for a new rostering team member, they tend to do the same working pattern as ourselves. We do 60% time present in the office. So normally on a 4-day training course, actually 50% of the time will be face-to-face and 50% will be done on Teams. So we have delivered more of an approach where we can deliver it in a more of a hybrid way post-COVID, but face-to-face training is still the preferred method. But our knowledge confirmation is a CBT that's then 30-odd questions that pull from a bank of 100 and something, so that's then a computer-based training. And we do use computer-based training for our crew to cover a larger number of team members.
Any other thoughts, maybe from Croatia Airlines?
We also have initial and recurrent, and we only have face-to-face. Especially for recurrent, I think face-to-face is a must, because there needs to be a discussion on actual situations that we put in front of them, that we collect from fatigue reports. We don't have computer-based training, but maybe for initial it wouldn't be so bad to use computer-based training, because it's general science knowledge about fatigue, circadian and wakefulness, but we do it, the initial is also face-to-face.
And regarding the competencies of the instructor, maybe you can also elaborate a little bit more. So we all know that the rule is as it is, so it is not that everything should be written, but there are some common sense behind the rule. We all know that the general requirement for any organization is to have all its personnel qualified and checked. That means all. So to be able to do that, you need to have qualified mentor, trainer, instructor. So how do you approach to this? Do you have your own standard? Are you maybe using some industry standard? There are also well-known, frequently asked questions and some answers regarding that from EASA available on the website. But generally, there is nothing written to that extent that all of us should stick to such solution. So I would like to see how you are thinking about that. What would be your way to deliver standardized training toward your personnel with a qualified personnel?
Yeah,
maybe Marc, yeah.
Marc, from the Cargolux side, yeah. We have a strong preference to have the fatigue investigators and fatigue specialists deliver the training themselves. The reason for that is that it's also about building trust and about building a relationship with the crew planners and with crew controllers. And this means that through the training we can build that trust as well. So that means that at the selection process for the investigator and for those that are actually doing the investigations, there's also a requirement to be able to conduct training, to be able to mentor. And for us, that's standardized through it being one person who delivers the training.
Mm-hmm. And you from Vueling, how do you see that?
Okay, in Vueling, the instructor is a human factor specialist. We combine with crew members' experience. So at the beginning, we use the CBT for the regulations, for the frame, for the new incorporation of schedulers. And after that, we are face-to-face training, a full day. We combine an 80% of, at the beginning, of theoretical of regulation, science, and then rosters, and 20% of practical part with how to fix the rosters, more fatiguing. And after that, and the recurrent training, it's only 2 hours. We moved to the practical way with these instructors that read all the fatigue reports, so they know the fatigue in the company. Like they fly and they read and classify all the reports, and they give the instruction face-to-face to the crew members and as well as the schedulers.
And on the job training, we touched that now. You said practical parts. So the on the job training should be included in any training when it comes to the KSA concept, which this is. So you need to build knowledge, skill, and attitude also with that kind of personnel to be able to understand the human performance, limitation, and in the end, thoughtfully take decision when it comes to the fatigue risk management. Some biomathematical models can, or generally they are, the barrier and a good solution to mitigate some of that, but there are also operators that do not use BMMs, so complete skill must be given toward the operational personnel, who needs to know how to address such fatigue management. So when talking about the on-the-job training, how do you see the extent of describing such kind of part of training in the operations manual? Do you think that to this extent that should be described, or maybe not? Maybe just some elements should be in the operations manual. So we are now reaching the part of the standardization, which is described in the manual. For example, maybe Dario can say something about it.
We have, of course, on-job training that the senior staff is overlooking when the new controller is starting to work, but we don't have it prescribed. I think it would be a good thing to have at least some kind of checklist or something, because at the end, so you can, because they have, after certain time, they're ready to go on their own, and it's then the decision of the crew scheduling manager. But maybe it would be good for to have some kind of checklist. We don't have it. I don't know if anybody has something.
Maybe just to add something regarding the Vili question, in aviation we used to follow the checklist and the procedure, and because there is almost nothing in the rule regarding the recurrent training for the trainers of the FRM describe exactly the program, then it will be easier for the operator to have something in the manual.
I think when it comes to on-the-job training, Dario mentions a good point, and that is the more senior members of crew planning or crew control who do the on-the-job training. In the end, the fatigue risk decisions that crew controllers or crew planners might make, they need to be empowered to do so, and they can only be empowered by their direct manager, not by the safety department. So when it comes to really on-the-job training, I think that is very important. In regards to documentation in the OMD, for instance, that's where the difficulty comes, because under fatigue risk management for us, fatigue training, we have a list of what needs to be trained, and that's taken as one training, which is delivered by the aviation safety department. So these elements, these small elements of fatigue risk management that enter the day-to-day job are not necessarily documented in the OMD. And I do think it is an important element, because we do need assurance that the manager is actually training that and that they have the right mindset to train that. And I think it's a very good point.
Yeah, we also believe so, like authorities, that to the extent that something is written, especially the contextualization that is being brought into the manual, is the essence. So the syllabus and the minimum items that are prescribed in the regulation is just the item. The meat behind is how you are doing that, and that's something that is where we are much more keen to see such development in the documentation. But let's see how the audience reacted to the first question. So the question that went to the perceived weakness in current training. where do you see the biggest gap in current rostering fatigue training? So there were some options. Yeah, that was very expected to see. So that practical element is something that we all would like to see. Even we as the authority, we would like to have much more practical element inside of our training. So real case scenarios, evidence-based concept of training, that builds your skill, your attitude in the end, how you will react in the similar scenario with which you will be faced maybe in the future. So this is very expected result. Then also we have the lack of competency-based approach. That maybe it's written in a way that could be interpreted that competency-based training is mandatory. No, it's not mandatory, but the common sense behind this kind of training relies on this, because experience that must be built within your expertise comes from the on-the-job training. You cannot see that anywhere before. You need to be trained within your organization as the personnel who conduct such training, such activity. So competency-based approach would be desired one in building skill and attitude, with experience gained during the training received with some additional, let's say, older or much more experienced counterparty that you have in your organization or pairing. And what do we also have here? Training duration too short, that also that we sometimes see, that the training is cut down to maybe 1 day initial, 2 days initial. It depends, it really depends about what operator wants to have in the end, and it must be effectively oriented in the end. So we need to see some results of such training. So I don't know, what do you think about these results?
Okay, I agree with the result. I'm not surprised because the training time is limited, it's expensive, and we are a challenge to, for instance, the crew rosters. They are working in ships, and it's very difficult to meet more than 5-6 people in the same course at the same day. So that means that to repeat the training many days for all the 20 or 25 crew controllers in Vueling. So you need to focus on the essentials, like regulation, science, and our rosters to show in one full day. For us, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. We completely agree on that, because there is no time-oriented minimum in the regulations. So again, we are bringing back the common sense. The trainings should effectively conduct the result. The result is managing fatigue with sense. So that means that human performance and limitation must be understood from that discipline of personnel.
And then we are closing the loop. If the training is too theoretical, and if the duration is too short, and the instructor is not competent, so what can we say? Is it training really effective?
But this is contrary. We were saying that it's theoretical too much, and then it's too short, that it's probably too long. I mean, if it's too theoretical, then it's probably too long. We used to have a recurrent every 2 years for 2 hours. It was simply too long. And we decided that it would make more sense to do it every year, but make it shorter and make it precise.
Of course, yes, there are combinations. There is nothing in the rule that stops you to do it like this or like that, as long as you are covering all the requirements and all the items from the all known AMC for that. But the results is showing that the audience want more practical examples.
More practical, yeah.
I think
That's the
in
key
the end,
point that we can take from this.
yeah, the key to fatigue risk management is also engagement from the pilots, from the management, but also from crew controllers and crew planners. And the only way to do that, I certainly share the preference of face-to-face training, not CBTs, because you can only get real engagement in classroom in having discussions, in challenging assumptions as well of crew control.
Yeah, of course.
And building that trust. So that's indeed where shorter but maybe more engaging sessions are much more efficient and effective with a basic theoretical background, because that is also required.
Yeah, great.
I think, and getting feedback from your training courses, so like you say, you can then tailor it to the needs of the individuals that you're training, and you can then concentrate on different subjects for the next year. It's just always then constructive to take on everyone's feedback.
Yeah, so we touched also this time limitation that we have in life. Yeah, everything must go, so the traffic cannot wait, and we want to squeeze that to the efficiency as much as we can. But then we need to take into account that other element, that just having training to have training is also not what we want to see if it's not giving results. So how to squeeze science with practicality? So that's maybe something that we can go on from this first set of questions, because in order to squeeze everything in the smaller amount of time, so how to bring science closer to the crew schedulers, crew controllers, how to have that simple, relevant, and applicable. Because we heard today a lot of also science conclusions and statistics, and we are also including that, of course, within our training that we all have, but how to develop that in a way to be much more practical, so that you really understand what's behind the theory of sleep, problems and issues that came with non-sleeping and so on and so on. So this is maybe something that we want to avoid, the situation that just sole reliance on biomathematical model will now change one rigid margin with another. That is something that I would like to see different. So not just to stick to one number when it comes, for example, now with Semperelli scaling. Now you will be having new score and just cut down the traffic just because you have now one score. And I know that we need to start in one way. So we are maybe starting like this, but by having rigid now limits. If I'm above this, I will not plan anybody to conduct flights. But is it really necessary to do so when it comes of managing fatigue? So maybe.
Yeah, for me, to bring the science closer to, for my perspective of pre-planning, for me the key is to translate scientific concepts to operational concepts in order to help schedulers understand what they are doing, right? Or KPIs or some indicators. So for me, schedulers doesn't need to know about physiology of sleep. They need to know how to identify a risk pattern. For example, they need to identify what's an early late transition, how to combine all the night duties in a working period, identify a deep early, how to allocate all these long duties. So it's important for them to understand that these concepts, not so scientific concepts on my eyes. So all these biological principles are explained in training, but the way to improve is to put all these concepts inside crew planning objectives. So if you put all this, it's a matter of integration of a concept. And about the biomathematical models, for me are key right now is this approach that I think Thomas explained really well. I think it's key right now in this moment, because FTL's limitations can be outdated in some points. So on my eyes, when you work with rigid rules, the you can create not ideal patterns. You can be compliant, but maybe that's not the optimal way to allocate some duties in a working period. So these biomathematical models give us like a different insight, a really important insight that help us how to proceed, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, we should work in a more than dynamic way, not that rigid like the FTLs.
In a way, we can say that by using already existed biomathematical models that you can introduce in your system, regardless of that, whether you seek for the fully fledged fatigue risk management system or not, so even with very simple systems, by using of BMMs, you are buying that element of science integrated with as a barrier to cope with maybe lack of knowledge from that part of the personnel. Maybe it really depends on the operator to assess that. But BMM can be very helpful to cope that science element within your system. So from the beginning, some 15 years ago, maybe even more, when we started all with this, we all thought, okay, fatigue risk management system, that's only for the big systems. So everything from the 9966 document and so on, that's also just for the big systems, predictive models, proactive models, all of this is just for the big systems. But this is not the truth. So if you want to get effective system, you can implement everything that you want from that document. In the end, there are very good stuff that can be taken and tailored within your own fatigue risk management, regardless whether it is within the system of special fatigue risk management system or it is done within the SMS. Yeah. Can we see the result of that topic? So the issue is, or let's say the question is, what helps schedulers, controllers most in applying fatigue science in real operations? That could be very complementing the earlier question, probably. Yeah, real case studies and scenarios. That's quite real to the first question that we had. So it follows the logic. The
theory and practice, yeah.
Yeah, the lower theory, more practical examples.
And I like that the second one is feedback, as Cherie. So feedback from fatigue reports, yeah.
Yeah. For feedback from fatigue reports, we will touch that later on, but that's something on what the good training relies. So maybe Santiago can say a little bit more about that. So how you are integrating that loop, how the voice that's being raised by the crews are being brought back to the training part of the personnel responsible for their roster. How is that being done? Maybe Santiago, you can provide something about that.
Okay, first of all, we believe in the feedback. In Vueling, we are 4,000 crew members. And last year, in 2025, we received 10,000 fatigue reports. So first of all, I would like in the feedback, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Crew Member, to report. After a long duty, a hard day, you make 5 minutes to report how hard a day you suffered. After that, we classify, we report, and these changes during the year, we update the face-to-face courses. The thank you to your reports. We, with Marc and his team, we change or we implement new rules, or we modify something, because the crew members need to know that it's useful, these reports. If you don't give feedback, probably the number of report fatigue will decreasing. If you say thank you, and you encourage crew members to report, to trust in the system, and you change something, improving the fatigue management, probably your number of reports are growing up. I give a simple example. After Corona, we modified in summer the flights to Greek islands. Mykonos and Santorini, they are difficult airports, and we fly in the local. This from Barcelona and Fiumicino. And we start to operate 3 sectors in the night. For us, it's a high score in Samperelli, 5.4. We are little, we'll see. We will monitor this operation because it's a requirement of operations to fly like that because it's in the night. And thank you to the reports, we discovered that the tactical planner in the OCC take advantage of this operation to change the aircraft in Fiumicino. At 7 in the morning, after the crews are flying all the night, when they arrive to Fiumicino, they should close the aircraft, open the aircraft, and the workload increase, and the fatigue increase. So we received 2, 3, 5 reports with that, and we discovered that it's a tactical planner. So we meet FSAC ad hoc, explain to the tactical planner there are not enough formation in fatigue, that is it's no go, and they stop to change the aircraft in this operation. And that's thank you to the reports.
Yeah. So yes, we should be grateful to the reports receiving to avoid the condition in which we will face even lower and lower reports, with having at least aggregated result being brought to the crew members are also very helpful and beneficial in their activity of reporting. And these lessons learned should be brought back into the training on the crew schedulers and crew controllers. So Cherie, do you maybe have some example, or how do you see that loop being closed? Probably in Easyjet you are using this information from the reporting system back to the training of the rostering personnel.
So as I said earlier, we have our own biomathematical model at Easyjet, which we call FRAM, and we are looking at launching FRAM version 2. Mm-hmm. So that gives scores to the rostering officers when they are looking at rosters and planning the build. But we do also have the ability for our crew to put in a fatigue mitigation request. So those normally go through to rostering for them to then look at that roster to see if they can actually mitigate the risk on that block. And when we're looking at fatigue at Easyjet, we are just looking at the bit that Easyjet controls. So we're looking at the risk to the business. So anything that is a high enough risk, we can then look at. Mm-hmm. But we will always feed back examples into the training. So as I said earlier, it's normally compliance and training that deliver those training sessions, those annual recurrents and the 4-day new entrant. But we also have guest speakers from Martin's department to give more context around the fatigue report forms, what we've seen in the reports this period, to give real data back to the officers so that it's more real for them to feel. Obviously, crewing, sometimes they are the last line of defence. They take more of the phone calls where somebody might need to go fatigued at the last minute. So sometimes those conversations can be a bit more controversial, but actually can be really, really valuable. And we find just being transparent and open and having those good, open, honest conversations really helpful.
And for example, during the fatigue risk management training or maybe some other training given to the crews, are you also informing that discipline of the aviation personnel what has been changed or maybe done within the training of the crew rostering personnel based on the reporting received from the crews? Is there any thought about that?
What we have done in some cases is communicate to the crews, not in the training, but yet prepare like a communication between safety and crew planning to the crews to explain new initiatives. Mm-hmm. For example, we implemented last year this heavy tail concept, which is try to put the workload in the middle of the WOP in the 3rd day, because the ideal WOP is 5, right? So we create this concept because of the reports. Mm-hmm. So we use this implementation to communicate to the crew in order for them to understand that we are taking into account all these fatigue reports. So this helps build trust in the system. Right?
Of course. So we are back to the building trust that we heard a little bit earlier during today's conversation. So building trust within the organization, raise the safety culture within the organization. In the end, you will receive meaningful reports, and with such reports, you can be better in dealing with the fatigue when it comes to the fatigue management, but also be efficient probably with your traffic. Maybe we touched the training effectiveness a little bit, so we can go a little bit more deeper in that. So how to say that we know that the training is effective when it comes to the discipline like crew schedulers and crew controller? What would that mean? Just I have checked somebody by putting a tick box, checked after the training has been done, or there can be some parameters, indicators that can show to you that your training is really effective. Maybe Dario.
Yes, you can always check the SPIs, robustness and stuff, but it would be really, if you're talking about the crew controls and crew schedulers, it would be really ideal if they could come back to EFSAG and say, oh, I have this pairing, I'm not so sure, so they ask a question, what are the hazards and how to mitigate them.
Do they use that? Do they ask you?
I said it would be ideal. I don't have it. But I would very much like to get those kind of questions. And when we have these recurrence, I encourage them to ask questions if they're not sure why some pairing, why is biomathematical model giving this result or that result. So I think that would be the measure, if how many questions, at least one, if I could have, to help them to do some, to lower the fatigue risk.
But let's see what the audience is saying about that. So what would be the best indicator that will show that fatigue rostering training is truly effective? From the pool that we have provided to you, so, and the options. Yeah. That's something that is on the closure that Dario said. So ask when you do not know something, challenge fatigue risk. Yeah, that can also show to the organization whether the organization has the training effective or not. In the end, if we just have the tick the box exercise, we will not achieve the goal. In the end, our BMM will do what it'll do, and we will probably put ourselves back to the topic that I opened, and that is that we don't want to have the situation in which one region margin now change with a different one. So now we are now in FTL limits, and now we are becoming the Semperelli limits, with not knowing what's behind, with challenging and proactively flagging fatigue risks. Such personnel can change probably their attitude toward the complete concept of the fatigue risk management, if being of course supported with that within its organization. Any thought on that? Maybe in addition, for example, positive crew feedback. That's also very interesting.
I agree on the answers, but it's true that it's not that easy to be waiting that the schedulers proactive. I mean, it's not that easy when you have a big airline. I mean, you have 70 or 80 people working on rosters. So for me, the best way, I mean, this is a good indicator, but the best way to do it is through KPIs. So KPIs can help you understand what's going on. So in our case, we have a lot of KPIs, too much maybe, but we measure it in different stages to understand with what each team, what are they doing, right? So we measure on the optimizer result, also on the publication, also on the tracking stage and day-to-day operations. So we can reduce the amount of people and see what's going on in terms of KPIs, obviously on robustness, quality of life and efficiency.
Yes, of course, that shouldn't be taken into account like I'm continuously asking things. Now it brings some other question, whether we are trained in quality manner or not. So if I'm continuously having questions it should be something that I should know, that talks maybe about my competence. This should be more related to the being proactive in identifying hidden risks that you can see during the strategical or tactical planning, and that loop with you as the crew scheduler that can feed back that information to the system. You can change something when it comes to the fatigue risk management, to fine-tune maybe your system that you have with some concrete maybe city pairing that you are dealing with. Any other thoughts maybe on I see there are fewer fatigue reports. That's something that has the lowest score. How do you see that?
That's not good. Fewer fatigue reports, it's not good.
That's always like an open question, whether we want to see more reports, or when we have a very, very big amount of reports, then again something is wrong.
No. We want to see more reports, but more precise reports.
Yeah.
That's why on the recurrent, for flight crew and cabin crew, to talk to them so they can specifically help us to understand what was the hazard. Mm-hmm. So
maybe, Dario, maybe we should think in that way, like if the planning is good, proactive, maybe they won't be fatigued, and maybe there will not be many reports.
No, they are always fatigued, but that only means that the hazards, they want to say us what the hazards are.
I think one reduction in terms of fatigue reports would be reporting fatigued on the day. So looking at it from a different perspective, as that being really the last barrier before an undesired state of having a fatigued crew member on a flight. And an indication of a reduction of fatigue on the day report, so crew members saying, I can't fly, I'm unfit, certainly shows that there's multiple elements further down the line, which mainly lie with crew control and crew planning, that are being taken to avoid that. So I do think that a measure of a reduction of fatigue on the day would be a good indicator. For the rest, it's fairly difficult because indeed, I absolutely agree, this is not a certification issue. This is really about behavior, and the behavior is very difficult to measure when it comes to individual behavior of crew members or controllers, crew planning mainly, their mindset towards fatigue. And from that perspective, another thing that could be done is surveys after the training and survey before the training, not about the training itself, but to get the crew controller, crew planner view on fatigue, on their assumptions of fatigue. So do a pre-training survey where maybe they feel more comfortable to anonymously speak up, to say, give their perspective on fatigue of crew members, and that those can be challenged and discussed then in the training. And that's also an indicator of the mindset and the behavior of crew controllers and crew planners. So that's also a way to somewhat measure the effectiveness of the training before and after, as to what mindset do they walk out of the training with and what do they carry with them afterwards.
I completely agree. Yeah. We cannot look into this like looking into silos. So just counting the number of reports more or less, this is not what it should be. That should be taken into account within the whole system and how that changed something that was much more maybe in the high risk area than it is now. So with such kind of correlation with reports, we can identify whether our training was effective or not. That's opinion that should be taken into account like this. Shall we open the questions from the audience, maybe to talk about them, their questions? Yeah. No questions.
The audience is
So you are all
fatigued.
eager to go to the city center as soon as possible. Or we managed to produce this very fatiguing for everybody. So on the scale of Karolinska scale, you will be where from the 1 to 9? Maybe then the statements that maybe for the last question that we have, maybe that. We asked one question, so what would you change? Yeah, so if you could change, add one element of rostering personnel training, what would it be? So what here pops out? We have fatigue, crew, training. I see practical there, understanding. Yeah, it shows that in the end we need to understand that the training that we have today, it must fall within your own organizational system, so it must produce the result that you want to see with managing fatigue of your crews. And in the end, without practical part, you will very hardly being able to get to this result. So practical element is very important element within the training. It can be achieved through the on-the-job training. It could be achieved by your statistical results, from your evidences, from already from the analysis that you have conducted as the operator. All these things can foster your training because you will build the attitude of your personnel and their skill with such approach. Only living on the theoretical part that can live to some extent, but it can bring in the gap within the system, especially when it comes to the proactive way of reaction of your operational system, operational stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have questions. Then shoot, let's see the questions. Okay. So, from Nataša, can you describe the red flags for crew controllers when rostering flights out of standby? Nataša,
can you just explain a little bit more question? Then I will answer.
Your crew controllers have to consider when they roster standby crews. Do they anything? Are there is there like a checklist they need to consider? Like, I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, but
before.
maybe this is question for the operator. I think, yeah, Dario.
Well, actually, you have only. You don't have that much options depending on how many standbys you actually have on a day of operation. So that narrows the possibilities. They check the FTL, the BMM, and above that, I think they're looking for the least to keep the robustness, to make the least changes that they can when doing activating on standby. I don't know if that's what you meant. What other elements you think they should check?
Your crew controllers can use when they roster standbys, as you described, to take the most or the less fatiguing solution for the crew members? Or is it just to check if it's legal?
No, it shouldn't be just a check whether this is legal. So that is a question that really reflects the practicality of our life within that area. So we all know that the life is not black and white, and that there could be a situation when you run out of standbys. So how you deal with that, how you can cover your traffic with no going into the most extreme way to cancel it. So I would say that when bringing us back to the science, using BMMs, you can see and check as crew controller whether such change, which will be ad hoc change, influence more or less on the fatiguing, let's say, score of that personnel. And then with talking with the personnel which is now being chosen to step in for that, you can address whether such flight is in the end go or no go. But that should be described. So such kind of procedure must be there in the manual. Your authority should stand behind this procedure, whether this is allowable or not. Because in the end, you should cover your solutions only with a standby or reserve. Other options are not in the rule, except you have such solutions developed through procedures. But these procedures must be based on the science. So we are going back to the science. It's not just change. Somebody who was prepared for the night duty and now you are changing that, some roster to him to go to some early start duty or vice versa. So such impacts on changes must be checked through the system, through the already installed solutions that maybe you have, like BMM, for example. I
would like to answer Nataša. In a practical way, when a standby is activated, something happens, some disruption had, and the time pressure in the OCC is hard. So for us, crew controllers are firefighting. They are to give some solution very quick. In Vueling, we use the clear limits, some alarms. If there are a change of rate very heavy, they pop up an alarm when they activate the standby. And we're developing with the mathematical model a simulator to abroad this flight, these 4 sectors, and give the fatigue at the end of this standby flight. And he can compare, he can upload different crew members, and they receive the fatigue score at the end of this flight or standby activation, in order to have the fatigue input, who is the less fatigue crew member or all the crew to perform this flight. This is I
would even say that if you dig even deeper, you should develop a sub-procedure how you deal with the changes that happen 72 hours, for example, before the planned departure, or, for example, 48 hours before, 24 hours before. So different combinations that can be applied dependingly how long before you are now changing somebody's schedule. It's not the same to change somebody who is planned to do something in 12 hours from now, or for somebody that maybe had their roster publicly available for them within their organization for 15, 14 days ago before, but now you are changing that 72 hours before. You can maybe do something with mitigation that is on the table within your company, but these mitigations must be prescribed, must be in the manual.
Have we answered the question, Nataša?
the industry keeps talking about reports. Within your organization, what other tools do you see, do you use to find out about fatigue among crew members? Is there anything else? So it's not just maybe to talk about a reactive approach, maybe we can talk about proactive.
We use, in Vueling, we use a lot of Tableau tool. We create some tableaus in order to help us understand with easily and quicker how it's going on. So at the end, technology. Or in our eyes and our vision is to introduce technology to give more importance to the optimizer or to the tools, not that much to the experience of the scheduler or crew controller. That's why our vision in Vueling is to keep going and try to have also optimizers after publication, because there's a lot of work there to do, and we have our eyes on that.
Yeah, I will also say that in the end we are coming to the validation of the tool that we are using. So by validation, the result of that tool, you will investigate the status of your fatigue within your organization. So conduct surveys, do some investigation that will go in line with your tool that you are using. That will probably be something alternative to the just waiting on the reactive report of the crew. That's maybe.
Vili, the other thing we have at Easyjet are liaison officers, so people. So a resource within the department, which I then think is a fabulous tool. So we have a couple of people that are based out in Switzerland for our Swiss AOC that are liaison officers. We have a couple of people that are cabin managers that are liaison officers for the cabin crew. So they are out on the line flying 80% of the time, and they do a couple of days a week in the office with us. We also have the equivalent with a commander at Luton who, again, flies out on the line but does a couple of days in the office with us. And then there's another 3 team members, including myself, that do get out on the line and fly. And it's fabulous to have those open conversations when you're out there. I feel like I'm treated like another crew member, but I get honest feedback while doing that.
Great.
I think another thing not to be forgotten in this case, and that could be quite interesting, is flight data monitoring. Something that we're currently developing is a risk analysis for fatigue based on our top flight data monitoring events. So the moment that we have a red flight data monitoring event or a yellow event, to categorically analyze those in accordance to fatigue as well, in the absence of a report from the crew member. So it doesn't matter whether the crew member has reported that or not, or reported that there was fatigue involved, but to systematically look at those top fatigue events. And I think that will give a very interesting other insight, really practically bringing the skills that are degraded when it comes to fatigue and the results, the outcomes of that from flight data monitoring into the fatigue risk management system.
Yeah, to the extent where the fatigue is maybe contributing factor to the occurrences that are being brought in through the flight data monitoring program. Yeah, that's also one of the options that can be used.
Yes, because fatigue reports are not connected with the with air safety reports, for example. You can have air safety reports saying we did this and that because we were fatigued, but there's no fatigue report. And it was always for me interesting to connect the flight data monitoring. I'm very interested in how will you do it.
Yeah, it is, and I think that the outcome of that is that you can really combine, be it KSS scores or CAS scores, whatever you're using, with your top flight data risks, and see, even in the absence of the actual acute fatigue or in the absence of very high fatigue levels, the lower fatigue levels, or sort of the yellow zone, can very interestingly be brought forward through flight data monitoring as well. Potentially, I mean, that's something that you need to see in statistics.
That's very interesting. Dario asked me before, another tool is the survey. Linards this morning from ATFF has shown how it's effective, the survey. I think it's yes. In Vueling, we launch a survey at the end of the summer. It's the peak season. We receive around 900, 1,000 answers as anonymous, and we get more information about how was the summer and which is the fatigue concerns in the crew members. And as I repeat, the feedback is an article. When we analyze all the figures, we publish an article with the results of this survey, a fatigue survey.
Maybe one more question. Any advice for larger operators whose scheduling departments have staff turnover? How to maintain knowledge consistently? So we are bringing back the issue to the continuing level of standardization within the organization. So this is again additional hazard and risk to the organization like this, continuously having the turnover of such staff. But what do you think about that? Maybe foster a solution with the mentor, with a qualified person or personnel, which are there continuously to be like a building block of the standardization within the larger operator. It seems so. So is that solution, or maybe some other solution? Cherie, what do you think? How to preserve that knowledge, not to lose knowledge continuously?
So we have a standard training package that we would deliver for anybody within ops planning or crewing. And we train the content of OMA Section 7, so the legal bits and pieces. We would then hand them to their own department for their shadow shifts, their wingman shifts, and they would be signed off when they're feeling confident and competent. So you would hope with that confidence and competence that the staff turnover isn't too high. But if you're always then training new starters to the same standard, you shouldn't then be getting a knowledge gap. There should always be those people there in their relevant departments to do those wingman shifts and those shadow shifts. Yeah,
I also agree. So this is also, as I said, one additional hazard toward the hazard of fatigue that we have. So the organization that is continuously have staff turnover, that should be again addressed, and how this concrete risk should be covered, that's some other question. But with such solution, probably the operator will find solution how to preserve the continuing same standardization within the training.
Just one question for Cherie. This standard training is described in some kind of manuals, because you said then there is no gap in knowledge. Standard training for the new personnel.
So
it's described somewhere, yeah.
So yeah, we have a training checklist. So we would do 4 days. We have a standard PowerPoint presentation that any team member could dip in and deliver. We try to keep the consistency if there was sickness, etc., of trying to get the same trainer to train those new people all the way through, so they know the approach of that trainer. But yeah, it's a standard training package. They would then get a checklist to sign at the end of the week, and we provide a training report to the department that at the end of the day is going to be their line manager going forward, that would then do those shadow shifts and those training shifts, etc.
Yeah, thank you. Can continue.
There is also one very interesting question, but I would like to answer to the second one, because it's one of the Croatian operators. So how do you teach crew to better use the rest opportunity?
I have a problem with that one.
You really have?
Because, yes, we always tell them...
That's not you. That's...
But Dario, you are trainers, so how you teach them?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to tell them, for example, I had just one example recently. After doing the night shift, there are more studies, scientific studies, saying if you go to sleep immediately, you will sleep longer. Then if you don't, if you come home, then you do something and you start sleeping later, you will sleep for a shorter period of time. And then there was this older pilot said, but if I sleep afterwards, when I wake up, I'm for nothing whole day. I will rather stay awake for the whole day and go to sleep early, like already at 10 p.m.
I would say that there are a lot of...
It's individual, so...
shared responsibility in the end, I would say so also. So there are a lot of done materials. Even I think that Jamie today also give us the references to the material, how to prepare ourselves as crews to better use rest opportunity or to prepare ourselves for the next duty. So the materials are there. They should be used during the training and in much more practical way delivered to the crews during the training, their training within that organization. But in the end, we need to stop at some moment and expect that the shared responsibility will also give its result. So you need to have that hygiene in your private life. In the end, when you are a crew member, you need to be careful about things in your private life also, to be prepared for the tasks that are already given to you in your roster 14 days ago.
Completely agree. The only other thing I would add is to try to make the training materials as engaging as possible. So we do have a computer-based training package that we call Fatigue Awareness and Countermeasures Training, but we've made it a non-linear storyline, so actually the crew member can choose their journey through that. And then at the beginning of this year, we're trying to replace a 90-minute PowerPoint presentation with me or one of my team with a film. And we've actually filmed that over a 4-day period. And the conversation, we've just weaved in all of the bits of FTL, FRM within it to make it a more engaging method of delivery. Because otherwise some of it is very science-based. It can be quite dry. So it's trying to make it more accessible for the crew. And actually the film we're hoping can then be on our, it's called Elevate, it's an on-learning platform. It can be in chunks, so it's more bite-sized. So when then a pilot's on, or cabin crew member's on their computer-based training day, they go, oh, I just want to refresh myself on delayed reporting or fatigue risk management or whatever it might be. They can just do a quick 10 minutes and it's just a more accessible manner.
Yeah, it's more like this, more to provide more accessibility to such material and maybe much more, let's say, adapted to the operational language of that concrete organization.
We also did a booklet that was actually based on some hospital in UK made a booklet for junior doctors, and it was very interesting, and we just adapted to the, so we tried with that also. That especially maybe makes sense for younger pilots and cabin crew, because older ones already have their own strategies, so.
Shall we go back to that question? It's very, so the training approaches sound promising, but how is the crew perspective structurally integrated into rostering design beyond fatigue reporting? So let's think about the question, and maybe Nataša, what do you think about this?
Yeah, the training approach sounds promising, so this is the good way, yeah? But how is the crew perspective structurally integrated into rostering design beyond fatigue reporting? So my answer would be, if the instructor is competent, then the crew schedulers will know how to plan. If the training is standardized, then we will not have a problem with fluctuation of crew rostering personnel. Even if the newcomers are there, they will be well trained. And then at the end, roster won't cause, that's my opinion, won't cause so much fatigue. As we've seen today, you can have a long duty hours, but if the planning was well prepared and done, then the crew were not fatigued as much. And this beyond fatigue reporting, we've seen also today that the operators are taking into account also the other tools, not only the fatigue reports. And I'm glad, as Vili mentioned today, we have to start from the human, even if the aviation is so complex. things should be very simple. Then we can learn. And this safety culture and this open communication between the crew members, crew rostering personnel, management, authorities should be really trust culture open, and then we can make a good decision, and then we can solve the problem. Yes, microphone to the gentleman, please. This was your question, I suppose.
It's more in regard to the question how sometimes bidding systems or voting systems from the crews are used that sometimes interfere actually with the potential fatiguing aspect. Like if you have a specific prerequisite that in regard to what rotations I would appreciate as a crew member, then that may be in contrast to what you think is better to avoid fatigue. See, bidding systems in contrast to optimizing or reducing fatigue.
In our case, in Vueling, we try to have a balance between all these preferences that they can ask for through bidding systems, and also fatigue KPIs. So this is always a balance between everything, between not just this quality of life aspects, fatigue, robustness, efficiency. We have to balance the ball in the middle of the triangle. It's not easy, but if we balance this, we can be aware that what they are asking is always considered, at least a little.
I would even say that when reading this question, perspectives structurally integrated into rostering design, I would say that the importance of the representative of the crews within the fatigue safety action group is very important, because of course you will not be able to solve everybody's problem of each individual, but aggregating these elements within the group which deals with fatigue risk management within the company will in the end bring back the solution to the management that will in the end will change the design of the roster if this is the willingness or maybe solution that is possible to be done by the information given from that discipline of the operational personnel like air crews. And that's.
Have you answered your question? Sorry, because I was not very sure. You will.
Maybe Mads.
Yeah, my name is Marc. I'm from the Danish Authority. I just have a comment to that. We are talking about responsibilities today. And as I understand the question here is actually if I can get influence on the roster that actually I will have, how can I deal with that? But I think it's very important to say that actually if it's our own responsibility as crew members to reach to a point where actually if I can't fit into this is my own responsibility to raise my hand and say, okay, then I'm probably in some part of my life now that I can't do this anymore. So I just want to point a little bit in that direction as well, because we're talking about responsibility here, and everybody has responsibilities in that matter. So nobody gets fatigued. But of course it's okay to say I'm in some part of life now. This is probably not the thing that I'm going to do the rest of my life, so I have to look in other directions. Thank you.
Thanks,
Matt. This is also a valid point. Yeah.
And really, we also have a responsibility to the audience, just to remind you we have a few
so
minutes
I would
more.
like to conclude with the final statements of my group. So if you can describe in a couple of words what you would change in today's training, what that would be. So from Cherie to Marc, and that's it.
Just in regards to training, I'd say just never settle and always strive for more. So like the filming, making it more engaging, just always trying to improve what you've already got.
Thanks. Nataša?
if one thing could be changed, I would say more practical examples. Then it is connected with tailor-made program, and if it's practical, it has a human touch, not some abstract things.
Thank you, Nataša.
Dario?
Yeah, definitely it should be tailor-made, meaning more practical. And also, I think the SMS, it's the principles of SMS, especially hazard identification and risk management, should be more integrated into the training, so that what is the most important thing, I think, is that the fatigue is a risk that affects safety. It's easy to say it for me, it's maybe self-understood, but it's actually it's not.
Thank you, Dario.
I would really like to move towards a more evidence-based approach. So, meaning evidence in regards to behavioral elements. I think it's all about the mindset of the crew planner and the crew controller. And in order to address that effectively, you need to know what that mindset is. And that will not necessarily come out in reports or in training or in SPIs or KPIs. That will come out from a survey beforehand. And based on that survey, to tailor the training to what your crew controllers or crew planners need. Just like organizations are different, an organization is not static, so the needs change and the knowledge changes, and that's where really tailoring the training to something evidence-based and then following up whether the mindset actually changes from that or we can steer the culture will make a big step forward.
Thank you. Santiago.
For us, the key is simple, competent and supported schedulers, and using the science in a practical way, and listen carefully the feedback of crew members in the fatigue reports. If we align 3 elements, I think the training of the roster make a difference to safety.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say keep improving the practical way to do the training, introducing some realistic simulations under operational pressure, maybe. And because decisions in the operation, when you have a disruption, you have a hurry, or it's difficult to take a decision, is where training really matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you very much to everybody, and thank you for being patient with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.